Name, crew.
Crew?
Yeah.
Which one?
You tell me.
Loads. DJ Renegade.
Yeah.
Soul Mavericks, London, UK.
Uh-huh.
Monsters, London, UK. Yeah.
Team Renegade.
Team Renegade. Team Renegade.
Second to none.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. Tell me what it was like when you first saw them.
Second to none. Yeah. The breaking scene was over. It was dead. It was the end. It was the fad had come and gone basically, and I'd started DJing. I was with a rapper named Blade, and we were out in Tonbridge, Wales. We had a gig there in Tonbridge, and I remember seeing, like, you know, you're doing your gig and stuff, and there's some stuff happening in the back or whatever. And me and Lone Star went over there, and we saw some guys breaking. But it wasn't like the breaking we were used to. There was some crazy guys on some next level shit. And that was my first introduction to Second to None. It was that kind of, okay, that's definitely some next level shit.
How did it make you feel?
I was excited. I mean, I've been breaking since I was 12 years old. Like, when you start something that young and you do it for 5-6 years or whatever it was by that time, it's like you still have a passion for it, do you know what I mean? Even though you kind of, by that time we'd kind of like stopped training as hard or whatever. Like in my time, I would go to Lone Star's mum's house. She had like a basement, or his sister's house, yeah. And she had a basement. We would train 3-4 times a week, 4 or 5 hours or whatever after school, right? And you still have that kind of passion, and then you see some other guys doing it that's really high level, and you're like, whoa, what's that? And you try and get down with them, and then you realize, okay, they're on they're somewhere else than us, you know what I mean? So it was, yeah, it was great. It was like, whoa, shit, I wish I'd still trained, you know what I mean? You have that feeling like, fuck, I wish I still trained. I think I get that now.
You saw them when no one else was breaking.
Yeah. Well, it was the last days, basically, you know? Like, what year was it?
88.
88, right? It was definitely the last days, because even me, the scene had died, and the last people that I was aware of still breaking were myself, Lone Star, Cel, Doc, Dazzle Fresh was still doing a bit, King B, Pervez, and maybe Hallet was still doing a little, but definitely King B and Pervez were active. And this is like 87, I don't even know when this jam was, in 88. But by that time we'd all kind of just stopped. I don't know if other people were still doing stuff, but definitely the crew of me, Lone Star, Cel, Doc, and Dazzle Fresh were done. We'd finished. We used to like be dancers for this guy named Urban Revenge, and he was like an English version of Cool Herc. So he would throw jams in the park, and we were like his B-boys. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was like Herc and the Herculoids, and it was like Urban Revenge and us. Do you know what I'm saying? So we kind of stopped doing that, and then you see these guys at this jam, and you're like, whoa, what is that? Like, they were just faster, they had more moves than us and everything, do you know what I mean? So it's like, you're like, you feel a bit intimidated, but at the same time you're like, damn, I wish I hadn't stopped. You know, because in your head you're like, I'd probably be at that level by now if you'd kept on. Whether it's true or not, it's like, right, but you know, you get that kind of buzz for it.
You've seen a lot of footage from them.
Second to none.
Yeah.
Well, what happened is actually, after we saw them there, I didn't see or hear about Second to None for a while, right? Now you have to remember, when when you're in when you think back to like the 80s and 90s, a year could feel like a long time. So between seeing them live and you and Paul bringing me footage of CH Fresh, it might have only been 2 years, but thinking back, it feels like it was a really long time. Do you know what I mean? But from then till CH Fresh footage, I didn't see anything or hear anything about them. So I guess I just thought they'd just have given up like everybody else, you know? Like they were the last holding on in their town and they would have just stopped. Then you see the CH Fresh footage and it's just like, oh wow, there's actually a scene out there. There's Battle Squad on there, there's the TDB Breakers and all these other people. You're like, whoa, there's a scene out there still happening, but you got no connection to it. Do you know what I mean? And then of course, I went with Blade to Uppsala in '92, and that's when I saw Nick, Battle Squad, Out of Control, Throwdown Rockers, and I connected back with the scene. And after that, it was a wrap. Because then I connected with Swift Rock, he would send me tapes, I would try and distribute tapes around London and whatever else, and just keep the connection. No one in London was interested. I just want to add that, because I know lots of people tried to pretend that they were still on it. But I can tell you straight that it's a lie. Straight. Alright? Yo, this thing is still on in Europe. We should all connect and all that. And they weren't interested. Simple fact.
How instrumental do you think that Second to None were in playing that part of keeping Breakin going and what they brought to Europe?
Well, I don't know if that story's for me to tell, but I know for a fact that because I still had a big love for the breaking thing, and I would practice every once in a while, but not seriously, right? I made sure that any breaking work that came my way, I would pass straight to them for a start. Then we had the Son of Noise parties, which they came down to. So they were still being seen by the London scene, and London's kind of like where it happens. So from there, after the Africa Centre thing in '95, then Champs was the next year and the ball started rolling. Do you know what I'm saying? If that ball hadn't started rolling, there wouldn't have been a scene in the UK again. Right? A lot of people don't appreciate that what they have and what they know today, there's a reason for it. It's all well and good that people went to breaking when it was a big fad in the 80s, right? Like, well done, you played a part and all that, it's very nice. But for me, the real love is for when the fad is gone. What are you doing about it? What are you, what are you doing about it? Do you know what I'm saying? And Second to None was still active. They were still trying to connect to anybody they could find that was still breaking. So they would be in Europe with Actual Force, with Battle Squad, with Crazy Force Crew, Out of Control. These are the crews that were still active, keeping the scene alive, right? And that is very important, because then that got the rest of the ball rolling. Do you know what I mean? So Second to None as a single entity, okay, but as a part of that collective that was going on, it's a whole thing that was going on. You had the guys in Australia, you had Air Force and that in the US. Do you know what I'm saying? Without this whole thing happening, we wouldn't even have what we have today. I'm not even going to debate that with anybody. Do you know what I'm saying? So when they went to Europe, as I know, they took that kind of fast, furious style and also techniques of moves that people in mainland Europe didn't have yet. For example, Penfold with the headspin, right? Without that, people in Europe wouldn't have got that higher level that happened later. Do you know what I'm saying? Like those moves got developed by other people, which then got developed and blah, 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 blah. There's always going to be a line back, right? But without that technique being understood, would we even have headspins like they are today? You don't know, right? Maybe not. So in America, you had men like Orko developing, the guys from Rapid Fire in Australia developing high level, but in mainland Europe, the source is really Penfold. Do you know what I'm saying? The source for those headspins is straight Penfold. The source for those kind of like just mad, powerful halo techniques is Asa. There's nobody else that was doing that at that time. You know, and I was at all the jams. Like nobody can tell me anything about that. You know, and I wasn't at the jams in London. I was at the jams in London. I was at the jams in Germany, Switzerland, in France. We travelled a lot with. I travelled a lot with Blade and with Son of Noise. You know what I'm saying? So I was at a lot of jams, and because our music was still the kind of music you could break to, breakers were always there. Do you know what I'm saying? So we knew who was who in the European scene.
You've got to know the boys individually, second to none as individuals, as people as well. And if I go through each one individually, if you could sort of let us know how you feel about them as people and what they brought and their style, and do you know what I mean? That made you feel so.
The second to none guys have been an enigma for me, right? Because it's like the conditions I met them under was like we were performing and they were coming to see us, right? So they may have even been fans of ours, but I was a fan of them. Do you know what I'm saying? So I managed to connect and hang out and all that, but I don't really know them that well. I can only go on my impressions of them, right? For me, it's like Tony. Tony's like an Essex white boy, right? He's like the first Mockney that I can remember. Do you know what I'm saying? He's not from London, but he is from London in his heart. Do you know what I mean? He's got that kind of swagger, like he sells fish in a market or something. Do you know what I'm saying? And then he's got that super crazy head spin technique that changed the world. Do you know what I'm saying? Like he was the one I probably saw the least, because when I'd go abroad or whatever, I'd see mostly Darrel Asa, Nick and John. But Tony was always like the elusive Essex boy in the background. Do you know what I mean? Nick, freeze fine. Nick was, for me, he's the guy with the style that I would want to emulate. Do you know what I mean? Like the combos and all that kind of stuff. That fast turtle that he does in CH Fresh, and you're like, whoa, what the hell is that? You know, he always had like a little bouncy style that was rich, I found. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. John is the the unlikely breaker. He's big. He looks like he should be clumsy. Do you know what I'm saying? But then his moves are clean. He's probably one of the cleanest b-boys of that era. Like everything's just clean. Nice halos, nice windmills, nice head spins, just right, you know? But he looks like he should be clumsy. And he's big for a b-boy that can move. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. That's John. Darrel.
The Brick Man. They come in at two, Darrel and Asa. Asa's like the whiz banger, the street fighter. And Darrel's just like the bear. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the big brother. I used to call him Brick Man and Little Brick Man. I mean, I was in my 20s, so it's okay. They just come as a package, you know what I'm saying? Like Darrel's the guy who walks through the door, and Ace is the one who kicks through the door. They have a complementary existence, those brothers.
What about their style?
Style, come on, man. Darrel was I'd say this, because I'd have to jump again. For me, Adam's the most creative of that era, right? He made so many techs and stuff like that people use they don't even know. I see lots of people use that they may think they came up with, but I saw Adam do those moves way back, right? Adam was like a creative breaker. And Darrel's like the second creative breaker for me in that crew. Like lots of different combos of stuff going on.
but not like a killer power mover like Asa. So that's another thing about that crew. They all had a different energy. They all had a different quality to their breaking. And that for me is very important in a crew. That people don't use the same stuff or look the same, you know? Even though they can do the same, you know, they can all head spin and they can all do turtles and halos and everything. But no two of them look the same, even in their techniques. And that's really important as a crew.
As a crew, you mentioned their breaking techniques there. What do you think of them as a crew, as a unit, as mates?
The Marines, man. Like, you just think of them like, you know those programs you see on TV and they run with the cannon and they assemble the cannon and all that? That's second to none. Straight squaddies, man. Straight squaddies. Like, I'm sure if they weren't B-boys, they would have been football hooligans or something, right? Or squaddies putting the cannon together. Really?
Did you ever have any introduction, or I asked about everyone else, what about Paul, Lace Master?
No.
Okay.
Spencer?
Yeah.
Never seen Break.
Okay. Nathan?
Nathan, didn't know him at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan came along a lot later.
Mm-hmm.
He was, for me, like, there was another guy, Steve, at that, you know, they kind of like, they were second to none in training, you know, but the hitters were really Asa, Darrel, Nick, Tony, and John.
Because Nathan was in like second to none small stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Had like a little crew and that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the Bible for him.
Yeah, I mean,
he's like the Kofi Annan. He's like
sometimes the people that make history are not the ones that write it. So someone has to write it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And usually it's not the person that's in the circle. It's the person outside the circle that writes the story, because you're so busy being in the circle, you don't have a big perspective. Whereas someone standing on the side, they can see everything that's going on that you don't see. Do you know what I'm saying? Everybody's got their part to play in this game.
We talked earlier about, because it happened in the 90s and late 80s, that there's not going to be really the context.
Yeah.
You know, when footage comes out and during that period of time, what would you say to get across to realise, I suppose, how important it was during that period, and what, how important, you know, if you were to put a context on it, what would you say? How would you put it?
It's impossible. I mean, it was different times, man. You have to think, when Breakin even first came to this country, like someone just getting on their head and falling was considered amazing. Now you'd laugh at that, like a 2-year-old could do that. Do you know what I'm saying? It's impossible to go back and recreate the impression of a time. The only thing you can do is try to compare it to something of today. So there's nothing today that's that incredible. The closest thing you could find is Anis Churfa or something, these tricking kids, or the tumblers that do crazy mad tumbling. Do you know what I'm saying? Where even though you've seen a lot, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's pretty amazing, you know. But that whole shock of footage that you're gonna see, you're gonna miss the context of how incredible it was. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, completely, because people can do stuff today. Some of it I don't even think is as incredible as they were doing, because the speed is missing from Breakin now, right? But there's still a few people that have this raw speed. You know, a lot of the new generation in America have this speed, but they don't use it in the same way, right? So I've seen kids like Saul and these guys, and they're fast, but it's not about doing rotating moves anymore. It's about changing shape more now, right? So the speed is disguised in another way, right? The straight power movers don't have the raw speed that second to none and these guys had. It's missing, but it's because the techniques are different and the possibilities are different. Like, you could never imagine someone like Asa doing a threaded halo. He's moving too fast, he'll be dead. Whereas the kids now, they can do stuff like that because it's slower, so there's more control of the technique, you know. I mean, I've seen Asa go into a halo and he just kicks and he's like, and he's spinning. Like, nobody does that anymore. It's about technique now and making new combinations and stuff, you know. So the whole paradigm of breaking has changed. So when you see like an old school breaker doing lots of halos or lots of windmills or lots of flares, you can't really appreciate how difficult that was when before that you only saw someone do 2 flares and really struggle them out. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think as well there wasn't a YouTube then either.
No. So the first time I saw like the guys and they were doing halos, I was like, oh, then what I've seen so far is not a halo. You know, it's just the high windmill that people used to do and call it a halo. But when you see someone doing it properly, you're like, oh, what move is, oh, this is that move that people think they're doing and they're not. Do you know what I'm saying? So you hear these rumors about people had halos and whatever. They didn't have halos, man. You know, like, not like this, not that. Or else show me someone from the old school that can do halos. Just show me the footage, man. Like, everybody's always talking about footage and all this. Show me the technique. I know how to do halos. I taught all my crew today to do halos. So I know that I know the technique. Show me that you know the technique of it. Because it's not what you think, man.
If you were to tell the world what you think Second to None has brought to it, what would it be? And that's a really wide question. Do you know what I mean?
To the scene?
To the scene.
Rawness, bro. Just rawness. You look at them in the battle with Style Elements. It's raw, bro. Like Ace is kicking at people, kicking over their heads and that. You can't do that now. You're disqualified, man. And just like someone would go in, and then someone else would go in, and then someone else would go in, and it wasn't even round stealing. It was just how it was. No one cared. They just were raw. And then Adam would come out and start popping or something like that. It was just completely ridiculous. That rawness, I mean, it's changed. For better or for worse, I'm not going to make that call. But that rawness, man, when you're there looking at it, you're just like laughing because you're like, what's happening? Ah, it's a mess.
I think they from what I see and what I know and what I've actually seen, they seem quite intimidating, certainly back then, because they were quite.
They look like Marines, bro.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, I'm from London, man. You get a bunch of white guys like that look like they're about it. It's like, yo, what's going on? They look like they're about it, man. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, they're football hooligans. They're squaddies. You don't mess with squaddies in London. Not them times.
Is there anything you'd like to add on top of this?
I don't know, man. I mean, things have changed. Even in the way that the scene is perceived in London and stuff. I mean, a lot of people used to talk a lot of shit about Second to None and say some stuff, but that's kind of eased off a bit because most of them ain't even around anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? So all the shit talkers have gone back to whichever rat hole they came from, right? So it's not even about that anymore. For me, it's about Second to None played a massive part in keeping Breakin alive, and that's really important. For all their achievements and all that, achievements are what the hell ever, you know. They won UK champs 2 times or whatever it is, and they represented in that. But I told you, it's about who was still about it when it was not in fashion anymore. That is what is the most important thing. And them guys were, and they repped, and they took their stuff wherever they could. I went to New York with them in 96 or 97, or maybe it was 2 years running, I don't know. You know, and they were about it. They weren't having it from anybody. Do you know what I'm saying? So the contribution is your dedication to this thing. Even when those people talking shit in the 2000s about Second to None, a lot of who have come back and like, yeah, Second to None, I remember. That's all I'm saying. Do you know what I'm saying? I remember when a lot of these kids were talking about that old school stuff and Second to None are old school and blah, 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 blah. And now they're like champions of Second to None. Stop. Just stop, man. Do you know what I'm saying? I was there, I know. So I will say point blank that this scene would not be the same if it wasn't for their contribution, man.